Out February 17th, February 18th, live trading, San Diego. We got the Lowe's Coronado. I mean, what else would you want? This event is limited to 50 people. Look at your calendar, clear it, make sure you show up. If you want to be a rebel, this is the place to be. You got to sign up for it now. Giddy up, baby.
Nice. And here we go.
And away we go. Well, welcome back, folks. This is the Rebel's Edge. I'm John. He's Pete. And in the background somewhere is Jared. Jared, are you there? Can we hear you today, or are you off?
What's up, guys? Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Well, Rebel's Edge, we are a macro free zone, except for 1 minute of macro at the very top of the show. So we're going to get it over with fast. Silver up 5% today. There's the market's going back and forth like it's pretty schizophrenic, Pete. And I don't know if we'll. What is that song in the background?
A little silver and gold, man. I'm giving you a little background music.
Silver and gold, silver.
I'm like you, Cornelius. I'm throwing that pickup in the air. I mean, it is Christmas time, for crying out loud.
And then you got to lick it, too. You throw it up in the air, it comes down, and he goes.
Nothing. Well, that's what people are getting right now, John, is a whole lot of nothing. Because quite honestly, yeah, the silver's moving a little bit, but I would say this, the collapse in volume from yesterday and today, if you go back to Friday, the volumes have just gone bang, bang, bang. And it's holiday time. People are starting to look ahead a little bit. So I think that's one of the things that's definitely influencing the market.
All right. That's the 1 minute macro, folks. Let's dive in, Pete, to a stock that has moved up by as much as 500% today. At mid-session, ICCM, which is ICE Medical, is still the leading stock among stocks, really. It's still up better than 200%, Pete. 320% at mid-session. It's traded 110 million shares. Average is 600,000. They have a treatment for kidney cancer, Pete.
Mm-hmm. It's great, John. It's a great alternative to surgery. They've talked about a lot of that and how commercially this could be something huge. So that's why the stock has made that kind of a move. I mean, think about this. It had a market cap of about 36 million yesterday, and now it's 130 million or more market cap today. So it gives you a little bit of an idea of how big this is for this Israeli company that's come out. And obviously, anything right now in the medical field seems to be where everybody seems to be going. And we've had so many different names, even the big names, Moderna and Merck, and on the work that they've been doing together. But even a lot of these smaller names as well, John. Just an unbelievable atmosphere right now where it's the healthcare world that's absolutely carrying things. The cash burn for this company is brutal, but you get something like this, and if they can get this to the commercial markets fast enough, that cash burn is going to completely disappear, and this thing is going to be a cash flow king.
Yep. It is one of those situations where we have a lot of people, whether they're getting ahead of things like that JP Morgan healthcare conference in early January or whatever, Pete, there's just a lot of stuff being done at the end of the year here. Kudos to them for finding this basically cold treatment for tumors and what it means for people with kidney cancer.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about VRNA, Pete, because this one was up 35%, basically normal action, 250,000 shares. It also traded way more than normal. It traded 10 million in the first hour today. Basically, they're really excited because it's a biopharma, just like we've been talking about, late stage clinical trials. Yeah. Pulmonary disease, obviously that's something that kills an awful lot of people every year, and it's a treatment that people are desperate to get a hold of, Pete.
And anybody who's watching television, John, sees the commercials for COPD and they've got the elephant putting his foot on your chest. Not fun, not good, awful. But these guys, and you mentioned it already, but it's phase 3 and the secondary endpoints also getting hit. So it's a positive. And this is a company, by the way, they've got quite a few drugs, John, sitting there in the pipeline right now at stage 2, stage 3. So the trials will continue, and this is going to be very, very big. I think when you look at what's happening with both of these two companies today, this is outstanding. And the ability to get it out there in the first half of 2023, which is something that they're going to be shooting for, I think that's huge. And that will be a huge cash flow for the company as well.
Yep. Like the stock. And just as Pete said, folks, COPD, this is something, obviously that if your lungs, if it feels like that elephant's on your chest, you'd pay almost anything to get that dang elephant off your chest. And these guys stand to cash in on that. All right, let's take a look at General Mills, Pete, GIS. Down today, even though they came out with earnings that were better than estimates, but obviously their costs have gone up rather dramatically. But between a combination of making the packages smaller, Pete, they've been able to pass that increased cost onto the consumer. And that's why the stock's up from $68 to as high as 88 a week ago. And it's still in the 80s right now today after a 4% drop.
Yep. Minneapolis-based company, near and dear to us, John, sitting right there on 1 General Mills Boulevard in Minneapolis. So they just continue to crush it. When you look at the stock, John, just within the last week or two, it hit 52-week highs. And yet the PE remains extremely low because of the fact they've got earnings growth, they've got revenue growth. Some of the volumes may be off a little bit, but they did raise the guidance as well. So just about everything working in their favor right now, including the organic sales, which were up 11%. So they're hitting it on all cylinders right now. They do have some headwinds. They've got some volume issues. But when you've got a free cash flow of $3 billion, John, and you're looking at a PE that's somewhere, I would say, I think it's somewhere around 11 or 14%, something like that, PE. That's an inexpensive company that still has a lot, I think, left in the tank. But it's going to be about the consumer in the first half of next year on whether or not they're going to continue to be able to spend the way they'd want to when they get into the grocery store.
And my answer to that, Pete, is they will continue to spend. Some of them will trade down. Some of us will trade down. But Cheerios, Yoplait, and a host of other things that these guys do, I would say on significant dips, I don't know if 4% is significant, but I would be a buyer of this one, Pete.
Yeah.
All right. What about Halliburton? This is one that we've loved to talk about because it's just a great stock. If you're oil field services and so forth, Pete, energy is going to be a huge demand going forward, I believe. And for that reason, Halliburton and Schlumberger both are going to benefit. Today, it was Halliburton up better than 5% right out of the gate.
Sales growth is off the charts. Earning growth is absolutely unbelievable. I mean, John, when we talk about what people really need right now in the energy world, we're talking oil and gas, and there's just so many different areas in which there's many companies in the services area, but the big guys are getting even bigger. And, it could be Devon, could be Halliburton, could be Schlumberger, could be any of these, but I think that the opportunities there for even better, when you're looking for gross margins as well. I think that they're going to be able to just absolutely hammer this out of the park. I like these names. I continue to like the energy space. It's been something, and you and I've talked about it, and it actually started November of 2020, and it's continued, and it continues to go to the upside, even with the price of crude coming back down from 120 back towards 75-ish where we are today. It doesn't seem to matter. They continue to just crank it out. And I think there's a lot of different names in this space. You and I talk about natural gas names as well. I think there's a whole host of names that you could say, these are going to be the ones that are going to continue to move to the upside. I think Halliburton's one of them.
Yeah, no doubt. Strong cash flow. So you said it there, Pete. This is not one of those, we'll make money in 10 years companies. They print money every single year. And if I'm right about the demand for energy products going forward, at least for the next several years, Pete, these guys will continue to print money. All right, unusual today. I've got Deutsche Bank, DB, and it's one that you and I both love and love to hate occasionally because, you know, the German consumer is, well, that's the biggest economy in Europe, Germany. And I think they're already showing signs, Pete, that this is going to be a really tough winter. And a tough winter is not good for the banks either. So a Deutsche Bank DB, somebody stepped in, bought a million share equivalent because 10,000 options traded at the January 11 put strike. So that's right at the money. I think the stock could easily plumb back down into the single digits. It's just barely above that right now, trading $11. I think it could see 9 and maybe even lower, Pete. So I bought puts on this one, DB, today.
And I joined you in there, John. Matter of fact, you and I were fighting over who was going to get the opportunity to talk about Deutsche Bank. And as the younger brother, I stepped back. I always respect, the. So here's what I've got for you. I've got General Motors, John. So take a look at Tesla, take a look at General Motors. And the only reason I put these two together at all is within the US, General Motors is the one that they think will be the number 2 automaker of EVs in the next decade, give or take. They're saying 2022 to 2030, they're going to be right up there with Tesla and competing head to head. So far, it has not happened at all. I mean, just take a look at those numbers this year. But somebody seems to think that this is going to be something. Tesla was 211 2 months ago. Now today it's what, 141, 142, somewhere in there, John. And meanwhile, GM was 35 2 months ago, got up to 41. Here we are at about 35 again. Somebody seems to think that maybe this is sort of a floor and there's a little bit of room to the upside. They are buying the February 36 calls for a couple of bucks, $2.07, 10,000 of those getting bought today. And they're actually spreading them off. Now, here's the one caveat for me. I don't really like spreading it off because of this reason, John. It doesn't really allow you for what you really need of 3 or 4 multiple when I'm looking at the spread. So they're buying the 36s, selling the 39s. It costs about $1. So it's very, very close. But you know what? I just don't like that risk reward right now. I think you have to have a little bit better. But I love what we're seeing out of GM right now. So I think the better trade is just to buy it for now and eventually spread that off if we get a nice move to the upside, which potentially we could out of GM. I do think that the upside is probably somewhere close to where it was before. Maybe it gets up close to 40. I think that would be a great opportunity there. So I like what we're seeing in a day where most of what we were seeing was very, very bearish. This is one of the bullish calls that we were seeing as far as the unusual option activity.
Yeah. And when Pete says bearish, just sort of like Chicago weather, Pete, just wait. Because you could say bearish and maybe in 20 minutes, the market will be bearish because it's been doing this today like a heartbeat. The S&Ps right now at mid-session are up 6. Dow is up 111, but it's been up a lot more than that. It's been negative, and the NASDAQ was really negative, and it's fought its way back into positive territory by a single point at mid-session. So stick around. If you don't like it, it'll change. All right. As far as sports, Pete, what are we going to be talking about today?
Well, I think it's pretty exciting, John, and here's why. When the very first one is, what is the one team that's probably been overlooked all year? And I think when I say that, not really a whole lot of conversation about the Jacksonville Jaguars, and for all the right reasons. They new coach, they're still trying to get things figured out and all of the rest of it. Well, I think they're starting to figure it out pretty good, John, especially when I look at what's happening right now with Trevor Lawrence. He is having an absolutely incredible year, and I don't know that everybody's paying attention. He's got 24 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. In the last 5 games or so, he's had 1 interception and 13 touchdowns, John. So when you look at it for a quarterback and a team that is right on the cusp of potentially being in that playoff picture, here's why. They've got the Jets. If they can beat the Jets and the Texans, who are pretty god-awful, and they likely should and will beat the Texans, Then their third and their last game at the very end of this season, the Tennessee Titans. That's who they'd be battling for to get that playoff spot. So I think this makes it a very, very interesting time right now for the Jaguars. I think Peterson's done a great job with that offense and what he's been able to do. And by the way, the offensive line's done a great job. He's only been sacked 24 times this year. When you look at all the quarterbacks in the NFL, you consider how many games they've played up to this point. That's one of the lowest of anybody in the league right now. So the offensive line's doing a great job. He's getting the ball out. And they did get ETN back, his old teammate from Clemson, after getting hurt last year. He's back. He's averaging 5 yards a carry, John. So there's a lot of reasons to maybe keep an eye on the Jacksonville Jaguars. And do you like this one, or is there anybody else that's overlooked right now that you think, you know what, these guys ought to be looked at too?
Well, you mention this one all the time, Pete, but Detroit, I'm not saying it's overlooked because you mentioned it many times on this show, but a lot of people aren't giving them a lot of love or a lot of chances. But Goff has been playing great. The defense is playing better. And they're 7-7. So they're right in the hunt. Mm-hmm. Obviously the Giants are right there, but the Giants have a tie as part of their record this year. So I'm thinking, Pete, that Detroit might be the last one in. And it just, I would give your, Ron Rivera and the Commanders a fighting chance. Mm-hmm. But, they're going up against San Francisco right now. And Purdy and the team are playing pretty well, despite the fact that Jimmy G is out. That defense is still tops. So, yeah, I think it's going to be tough for the Commanders to get by the 49ers on Saturday.
Yeah, I agree with you, John. And that kind of leads right into the next one, which is playoff spots. Playoffs. When I look at this one, John, you've got Seattle at 7-7, you got Detroit at 7-7, and you got Green Bay after the big win last night over an absolutely god-awful Rams team. They're 6-8. I don't think Green Bay's got a shot, and here's why. The last couple of games that they finally won a couple of games, John, were against absolutely terrible competition. So they beat the Bears, they beat the Rams. That means they didn't really beat anybody, right? And when you consider the records of those two teams, I mean, they're pretty pathetic. So they haven't really been able to do much of anything. So I don't think Green Bay is part of that whole picture. But you look at Seattle and then you look at the Detroit Lions and you say, all right, which of these two teams? Well, it plays out pretty well for Detroit because they've got at the Panthers, then they've got the Bears, and then they've got the Packers. Now, because of the way they've been playing, I think Detroit is really, really well positioned here. Seattle, well, maybe not so much because they've got to play the Chiefs, they got to play the Jets, and then they get the gift of playing the Rams. So it depends how they do in those first two, and can they get past those two? And then, of course, they've got the Rams. I actually think the Detroit Lions are on the path right now, John, to be a playoff team and maybe leapfrog a couple of the teams that, were kind of considered right in front of them right now.
Well, Pete, you mentioned that Rams, which, when you've got Stafford and Kupp, injured, mm-hmm. And you've got to depend on other folks, they really did bet it all on last year. Yeah. And now they seem like they're just playing out the string. Maybe they get a higher draft pick. It doesn't seem like they're even trying. And certainly against Kansas City, they pretty much came out and they were flat right from the opening kickoff. So, I think that's a team that has fallen so fast that it's kind of shocking. And like I said, the Detroit Lions are on the opposite end of that. And I'm not saying that it was the Stafford trade for Goff or anything like that, but Goff has been healthier and Stafford has had a lot of trouble, and he had a couple offensive linemen retire and things like that. Whitfield that was his last game, was Super Bowl last year, right, Pete?
Yep.
Now he's on TV. Now he's a commentator and he's good. But he definitely misses a big, strong tackle on that one side, which might be part of why he's hurt.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, one of the biggest strengths for Detroit right now is probably their offensive line. And Goff, I think, fully knows it, fully appreciates that. And they have taken advantage of that by throwing the ball and putting up a lot of scoring, John. And offensively, they're on fire. Defensively, they've gotten a little bit better. They were terrible, and they've gotten more closer to maybe just pretty bad. And that might be enough, because look at what the Vikings are doing right now with the worst defense in the NFL, and they still got 11-3 record. So it shows you just got to get a little bit better, and things can happen. So I'm impressed with what Dan Campbell's done. He's still my favorite coach in the NFL right now, John. I swear to you, after doing Hard Knocks and all of that, I got a man crush on the guy. I think he's doing an unbelievable job.
Obviously, one of the guys that earlier in the season, when you were saying who's coach of the year, he didn't come off of either of our lips. But if these next 3 games, Pete, if he can sweep them, he might be the guy that everybody's talking about for coach of the year.
Yep, I think he will. That would be awesome.
Well, folks, we appreciate you joining as always. Please tell a friend. Again, literally hundreds of you are signing up every week for the YouTube channel. We stream live on Twitter, on Spotify, on marketrebellion.com/edge. And we do actually have the YouTube channel where thousands of you, some 37,000, have signed up. It's a free subscription. Just go to YouTube, type in Market Rebellion and click subscribe. And if you click notifications, Pete actually shows up instead of Santa Claus, comes down your chimney and delivers content to you. That's the way that works. So,
ho, ho,
ho, ho, ho. See you tomorrow, everybody.
Grandpa.